looks back on how Democrats ended up with the Harris-Walz ticket in 2024. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's name will no doubt be in the conversation. President Biden dropped out of the race just days after Pelosi privately expressed concerns to him that he could not beat Donald Trump. There is also reporting that Pelosi encouraged Kamala Harris to pick Governor Tim Walz as her running mate. It is far from the first time that America's first female House Speaker has had enormous political influence, and she outlines many of these moments in her new book. And former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi joins us now. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure to be here.
The book, The Art of Power, My Story as America's First Woman Speaker of the House. One of the things I love about it, and it's one of the quotes very early on in the book, you say, when I won, this is about your first race, a special election, San Francisco, 1987, when I won after a hard-fought campaign in the trenches, where I was myself, I realized I was indeed ready and I knew my power. So you're talking about how you were yourself fighting in the fight, fighting for things you believe in, which is really interesting, and it's kind of a theme in the book about relishing the fight. Today's fight in the presidential contest, Donald Trump having a press conference, trying to highlight the fact that Vice President Harris hasn't taken questions from reporters, hasn't done interviews. Do you think that the vice president needs to be more out there talking to reporters, talking about issues in a give and take, not just in speeches?
I think she should say what I just said in that sentence. She should be herself. She should be ready. She should know her power in all of this. And I don't give anybody advice except to be themselves and be ready and know the power of their individuality and their authenticity. But I do help them in the trenches, on the ground, mobilization, that's 1M, message with boldness and progressive values, but non-menacing, and then the money to get it, attracting the support that makes it happen, the 3Ms. And 3 no's, no wasted time, no underutilized resources, and no regrets the day after the election. So she, I think, has done a remarkable job coming out of this thing, practically out of the blue, that this change would take place, and has done her politics very well. She's astute politically, she's strong officially in terms of policy, and she's faith-filled personally. So I think that whatever path she chooses will be great.
You're optimistic, though?
Well, it's a decision. You make a decision to win, and then you make every decision in favor of winning. How you mobilize, how you message, how you money with the resources and the rest. And I'm optimistic that we will help do that and that she will lead us to victory. We just have this to be about the truth. And that's something that is so foreign to, what's his name?
To Donald Trump. Let's talk about Donald Trump, because he is obviously a character in the book, in writing about being speaker. I want to start with what you start with is about the awful assault on your husband, Paul. First of all, how is he doing?
Thank you for asking. He's doing okay. He's coming along.
Yeah.
He's coming along.
It's a long recovery, though.
It is. It's long. Don't get hit on the head.
Yeah. And he still can't talk about, you write in the book, he still can't talk about the attack on him. How much do you hold? I mean, the guy that broke into your house had obviously, his mind had been poisoned by a lot of insane things online. How much do you hold Donald Trump responsible for what happened to Paul?
Well, I don't really, let's talk about what happened when that happened to Paul. I hold him responsible for making fun of it, for making a joke of it, or thinking he's funny. His son, Republican governor, leaders in the Republican Party making fun of what happened. I found that appalling and really saddening for my children and grandchildren. We kept Paul away from most of that, so he didn't see it. Instead, we showed him the thousands and thousands of outpouring of love, prayers, and all the rest for him. But don't you think that that's stunning, that someone would be assaulted in their home and people would make fun of it?
I was absolutely shocked by it. I wondered, when there was the assassination attempt on Donald Trump in Pennsylvania a few weeks ago, and obviously there were a lot of sympathies expressed to Donald Trump, including by you.
Of course.
I wondered what your I wondered how much you thought about the reaction of the Trump family and Donald Trump Jr. and others in their inhumanity to Paul when you were expressing humanity to Donald Trump?
No, I didn't think about them. You know, we don't agonize, we organize, we go forward. And the assault on the president was absolutely horrible. And thank God he wasn't severely injured, apart from the bullet hitting his face, his ear, something like that.
Yeah.
And it was an assault. When people say, well, it wasn't that much. Well, no, somebody shot the president.
Yeah.
But regardless of, thank God that it did not have serious consequences. But it's still a serious, horrible thing that has to be recognized as that.
Yeah. Let's talk about one of the other things in the book. You write about your experience on the Intelligence Committee, something you're very proud of. Mm-hmm. You were very, very early and out there questioning the Bush administration's casus belli, their cause for war, their case. Yeah. You were saying that the intelligence did not justify the threat that the Bush administration was putting out there. This is all, of course, in reaction to 9/11. You also wrote, and I found this really interesting, that the investigation in Congress found strong evidence of multiple concerning links, this is your language, of the hijackers to Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
And yet, Bush administration, Obama administration, Trump administration, Biden administration, we don't see any real effort to hold Saudi Arabia to account for that. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I just don't know. But it is important for the record to show who these people were, how they got here, what other support that they had. And it took years before we were even able to declassify that information about Saudi Arabia's involvement. It's really a sad thing. Now, I have other problems with Saudi Arabia now, but that's not the point about what happened then.
Yeah.
It was remarkable because, as you recall, there was no air traffic. Everything was to a standstill except the Saudis were able to leave.
Bin Laden family leaving the United States and Saudis, yeah. In addition to making that observation, which I found astute and interesting, you have for your entire life been a hawk on China, holding China to account for its multiple human rights abuses. One of the biggest gifts that the United States ever gave to China was most favored nation status. And in fact, a lot of people say that that was really when jobs went overseas, not as much with NAFTA, more with most favored nation status, which happened during the Clinton administration. You note that Senator Max Baucus claimed that when this debate was going on, with most favored nation status in place, this is a quote from Baucus, China will become the great respected democratic nation that we all hope to see, which obviously did not happen. And what I wonder is, do you think that people like Senator, then Ambassador to China, Baucus, and Bill Clinton, do you think that they actually believed it, or do you think they were doing what corporate America wanted them to do at a time when the Democratic Party was trying to get more corporate money to achieve democratic ideals, capital D democratic ideals? Well, what, do you think they really believed that, the MFN thing?
You'd have to ask them, but I don't think it was for corporate money. I just think it was corporate America just... It was a very strange situation. It was corporate America for services, banking, insurance, and all that. Just wanted the access to all of that. But the U.S.-China Business Council, a group that was moderate and smaller-sized businesses who wanted access to China, were not getting it. But if say, you were a small business or a moderate-sized business U.S. and you had a product that you wanted to sell in China, the Chinese would demand the design. Once they had the design, and you thought you were gaining access to the market there, they'd say, "We don't need you anymore.
Yeah,
we have design. We're going to sell it to our own people. You can't sell here. We'll compete with you in the global market." Of course, competing means you'll have fair employment practices. We'll do it with prison labor, and it'll be cheaper for us, as they're doing now. As you see, some of the Chinese dissidents now who are free, who had been in prison, are seeing that the products they were making in prison have an American label on them. They're being sold in the United States.
All right, I've got a lot more questions. Stick around for more with former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. that is missing in this book, and I know you could write 100 books on fascinating topics, but the missing chapter would have to do with the last month and a half.
Yeah, yeah.
Since the debate, the June 27th debate that Dana and I moderated, you were watching it in your apartment here in Washington. What was your reaction when you saw him walk out there and then his answers or his inability to give coherent answers?
Well, I thought we were going to see Joe Biden from the State of the Union. I never wanted to debate what's his name because it's always, he's a joke. You know, it's not a funny joke, but it's a joke. And he said, no, I'm looking forward to it, you know. And so he was confident about that. As one who has, as party chair in California and also the leader and speaker with my own candidates for Congress and the rest, not my own, but our party's, I always would just say, if you're going to debate, two things. Have a clear mind. Have a clear mind. And remember, as Christine, my daughter, always says, the Tour de France is won in bed. Get rest. Be rested and clear. You know why you're here. You know what you care about. You know how you want to get things done. You want to show people what's in your heart. You don't have to memorize anything. You don't have to have days of prepping. Mm-hmm. So when I saw him, I thought, in my view, over-prepped, not a good idea.
Did you think that was all that was going on? I mean, the president has not had a full cabinet meeting since last October. There are people, Democrats that I've talked to, who think that obviously he's not able to communicate the way he used to be able to communicate, and they think that people in the White House were hiding this from senior Democrats like yourself, keeping a close control over who got to see him.
I think this president he is a consequential president.
Of course.
In his term in office, he has accomplished great things, as we talk about.
How do you think history is going to remember his decision to not run for re-election?
I think history will honor him as a selfless person, a selfless leader.
Have you talked to him?
No.
Still no?
Well, that would not be unusual. Several weeks would go by and I wouldn't talk to him.
What do you want him to know about?
Well, he knows I love him. 3 generations of our family are big Joe Biden supporters. My husband and I, Paul, and our children and my grandchildren, they love Joe Biden.
America did not have a female Speaker of the House until you, in 2006. I want to hear your honest take on this. We've never had a woman president in this country. Do you think that we can have a woman president? Do you think that are you concerned about whatever Vice President Harris's pluses and minuses are, independent of her gender notwithstanding? Do you worry at all that America will not be willing to elect a woman president?
Well, let me just say, because people say all these other countries, Margaret Thatcher, Indira Gandhi, you name it.
Golda Meir, right.
All these people. But they are in a parliamentary government. All you have to do is for your party to win the parliamentary elections. And you're the head of the party, and the party chooses to elect you. That's different from running nationally for president and being subjected to an electoral college that is dominated by a few states. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by all rights. We think she should have been president, but she didn't win the electoral college. So it's harder. I think that Kamala Harris should win because she's the best. She'll be a great president. She happens to be a woman,
right? And
that's icing on the cake.
But do you think that will be held against her by enough? Are you worried at all about it, knowing how difficult it was for you to even be the head of your parliamentary system, and even get into leadership? Are you worried at all about whatever that was? And you write about it in your book very ably. Somebody saying when you wanted to be in the leadership of the House Democrats, somebody saying, well, why don't you just make a list? Why don't you ladies just make a list of what you want and we'll give it to you? Somebody said that to you.
But when they said, who said she could run?
Right, who said she could run?
Light my fire, Lord, you poor baby.
And that's the Democrats. Are you concerned about...
In this century.
Yes, just a few years ago, really. Are you concerned about that attitude standing in the way of a President Harris?
We don't agonize, we organize. President Harris is astute politically, strong officially and policy-wise, and deeply faithful. And I think that her strength will lead us to victory. And the only reason I became Speaker is because I led them to an electoral victory to win the House for the Democrats.
Right.
That's why.
That's organized. I get it.
You get it organized, mobilized, message.
Don't agonize, organize.
Don't
Got
waste
it.
the time.
Last question. It might be hard for people to believe, but you're 84 years old. You're still a potent political force. Mm-hmm. You're running for re-election. Mm-hmm. I don't know if writing this book or just the last month and a half has had you thinking more about your legacy, but what are your plans? I mean, obviously you're going to have another term in Congress. Are you just going to keep going?
Well, who knows? I'm not one to paint myself as a lame duck, but I do have other things I want to do in life. And right now, my focus is on winning the election. To have Kamala Harris be president, Tim Walz, we're so proud of our House member, but they were all great candidates for vice president. Any one of them would have been great. Tim is fabulous, and we're happy to have a House member there. And that's my goal, and to win the House for the Democrats, and hopefully that means the Senate as well. So that's my focus right now. I ran again to serve now and to make sure that we had a Democratic president, Democratic House, a Democratic Senate, and all that meant for state legislatures and other races across the board.
You know Kamala Harris for a long time because you're both San Francisco Democrats. The Republicans are painting her as a San Francisco radical, a San Francisco liberal. What's your take on that?
Yeah, when we had the convention in San Francisco in 1984, I was chair of the host committee to win that convention and put it on there. Our hospitality there, they called it San Francisco Democrats. What's her name? Somebody from the UN. She kept saying that. That's.
Was it Jean Kirkpatrick?
Yeah, her. But this has been a long story for them. Look, they're calling Tim Walz a progressive in this. He was right down the center.
In the House,
he was. Right down the center.
Well, he governed more in Minnesota more progressively than he did as a House member.
But he was not we're all progressives. It's a question of how left wing we might be and all of that. As a San Francisco liberal myself, proudly, I can say what works in Michigan works in San Francisco. What works in San Francisco does not necessarily work in Michigan. So they will govern from the center because you must. Yeah. And they have to be perceived that way. So I wouldn't pay any attention to how the other side, we don't agonize, we organize.
Madam Speaker, the book is The Art of Power. My story as America's first woman Speaker of the House. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Best of luck with the book.
Thank you so much.
What